All right, folks. Today we've got Lindsay Rios in the house.
I'm not supposed to have to
Lindsay,
put my hands up.
no, you can put your hands up. Do whatever
No,
you want.
apparently that's a elder millennial thing. You know that?
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess young people don't dance with their hands up. I don't know how it
Okay,
works.
so what do they do now? Is it? It's this.
I hate that so much.
All right. So before we dive into the deep stuff, let's start with the fun part, right? Like, tell us a little bit of your story, like who you are, what's the journey that got you here, and like why is this conversation actually like so close to your heart?
So, I think why it's so close to my heart, I just was literally having a voice note exchange with someone about it like 10 minutes before this. I have actually been really lucky to get to work at several jobs where I can say, I love my job or this is my dream job, right? And I recognize that there are so many people out there who can't even say they like their job. A horrible job or a horrible boss or horrible culture can ruin your life, like truly. And so, the amount of time we spend working, it's so important that you find a place that you can like and be happy and it support your personal life, not the other way around. So I'm so passionate about people finding their job that they love so much because everyone deserves that. If you can have that, then you're going to have so many more wonderful things. So that's the why. Um I've also worked in an industry where it's really, really horrific
Hmm.
culture, no work life balance, no mental health recognition. That's where I got started in my professional career, which was in the automotive world. And fortunately, I actually have really fond memories overall being in that world for about 5 years. But I did get out when we had my now 10-year-old, and it was like, well, there's this no option for me to stay here because there's no end to your day when you sell cars, right? It's if you're supposed to leave and as someone walks in, there you go, right? Well, that doesn't work when you have to go pick up your baby from daycare now. So, I got into tech, fortunately, which wasn't easy because especially then it was very much all about you have to have 5 years of experience, blah, blah, blah. But then I got to work somewhere for 5 years that gave me really fantastic work life balance. And I've only worked at companies since then that continued to give that to me. And so I just want everyone to have that. I
I
really
love
do.
that. So I'm curious. It's funny because you just had the 5 years, and in my mind, I was like, and you had to have a college degree. I've never understood that, why you need to have a college degree to be able to sell. I didn't learn anything in college about selling, but you've had a very impressive career. You've had a crazy journey, which is also one that we've talked about. But I'm curious is like, what was that moment that made you just like stop and just be like, you know what, like we really need to like start talking about mental health more
Mm,
because it's not talked about at all. Everybody needs like tries to show the strong side of them and how they're this great person at what they do. I almost wore like I have this cliche sweater that says hustle on it. I've got the cliche coffee is for closers.
huh?
Like that kind of bravado mentality has always been in the sales industry. So like what was that moment where you're like, all right, pause, let's start talking about this a little bit more.
I think that I was always really open and transparent about it in very like one-to-one conversations, especially if, once I was in leadership managing people on my team. I was never shy about it then, but I feel like truly, truly, the last full before I was became a fractional leader, the last full time company I was at for about 3 years. I think it was the first day I started, and we were having an all hands, and the CEO and founder was announcing to us that we were going to start using a company that would give us free therapy and like good therapy. And actually, the founder of the company came on to explain to us about them and why they were different. And it also included, it's called Spill Your Feelings. So it would integrate right into Slack. And there were other tools and things it used, but the main value to me was we were going to get free therapy. And the way that the CEO introduced that we were going to have this talked about in detail his personal struggles with anxiety that he's been dealing with his whole life and to this day. And not just like the cliche you see, oh, we've all struggled with mental health, myself included, and then moves on. No, he was specific. And I actually had gotten like a little emotional. I remember being like, oh my God, like I mean, I was so excited about joining that company as it was, but I was like, this is it. This is like the right company for me because it starts from the top, right? When you're going to be that transparent about mental health. And so I went, okay, if he can do it, I'm going to be more proactively vocal about it too.
And I love
About
that.
4 years ago.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I'm sure you saw, like, just recently I went public about, my past and my challenges. I still deal with anxiety. I take medication for it, but I've had plenty of panic attacks in my life. And it's something that I think for years and years, I told myself that I didn't have a problem, right? Or it's just stress, or it's like, oh, I'm busy right now. So it's like, it'll get better when things calm down. Things don't calm down.
No.
So I relate with that, and especially with like that story of the CEO. And that was kind of I'm part of like Scott Leese's network, and he had a special guest show up, and the whole thing was talking about like the imposter syndrome. And that was part of why I was not as public about it, because I was like, who am I to talk about this? Who am I to share this experience? Where now I'm just like, it doesn't matter about who I am. It's like, I walked that walk, I've gone through it. So like, the best thing I can do is at least share with people like what I learned from that, where it's like, hopefully you don't have to go through that.
Yep.
I remember when I had my startup, that was like my first turning point, because I didn't know what depression was until I fell into it. And like, I'm the type of person that usually like 5 a.m, I'm up, I'm ready to hit the gym, I'm ready to get going. I'm a morning person.
You can tell by my reaction, me too.
My wife is not. And it got to the point where it's like, I would wake up mentally, I knew I had to get the day going, but like physically, my body just did not want to move. And thank God for my wife. Like at the time, like she realized it, she recognized it, and she got me out of it. But that was my turning moment, where I was like, oh my, like, you don't realize that you slip into that. You don't realize what happens when you let burnout like continue to happen until afterwards. And like, you never want to be in that afterwards. And so I'm excited to dig into this.
Me too.
All right. I'm personally passionate about it, but I'm curious, like, if someone could only catch the first 5 minutes of this episode today, like, what are the top 3 takeaways that you'd want them to walk away with?
You're not alone. I think that is probably first and foremost. You deserve to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's possible to
go a little bit deeper on that one. It's possible,
but it takes intentional choices. Right. And so an example of that, I think, is I was in, so I'm in the women in sales community. I'm really active in there. And there's an executive leadership group. And about every 2 months, someone will come in, someone amazing, that speaks to us. But it's pretty open roundtable. And, these women, all these women, they're just amazing, and we're vulnerable, what have you. But I still heard from a lot of these women too about this fear that they have about speaking up for the things that are non-negotiables for them in their next job, because they're worried they won't get it if they say it. But almost everyone's non-negotiable had to do with probably protecting their mental health and their work-life balance. And I was just like, no, like, you deserve, and it is possible to get the job that you want with your non-negotiables. Are you going to say no to a lot of things? Absolutely. That's how it works. And so for me, like, I get a lot of nods of like, yeah, that makes sense, but not as many people being like, me too. Whenever I say I will only do remote first places, it does not work in my life to have to go into an office on a regular basis. It just does not. And I don't live near the ones that they would probably be in, right? If without traffic in the Bay Area, I'm 40 minutes from San Francisco, but we all know that that's not a world that exists of zero traffic. So it's just like, that doesn't work for my life. So you are not an option. And there's just a lot of fear of thinking, I'm not going to get the role that I deserve and want, and have the things that I really do need in my life, for the mental health, for the work-life balance to be, it could be parent stuff. It could be whatever is going on in your life. People are too afraid and think that they're going to have to open up, to do things that they don't really want to do, in a job to get the job they want. And it is possible to get what you want.
It is. And like, you know what? It's interesting. Like, I feel like it took me probably 35 years to finally get to that point as well. Right. So like, I know exactly what my negotiables and non-negotiables are. And I think it was also like when I became a parent was in that transition even more, because it's like, I'm not going to miss my daughter's, like, I'm taking off tomorrow because my daughter has her Christmas school party. I'm not going to miss that, right? Like, those are things that matter more to me now. And so it's like making sure that's where culture is so important, right? And so it's a really good point that segues in that the next topic of like, it's called what it is, right? Like sales is an emotional roller coaster. Like 1 minute you're on top, next minute you're ghosted by a dream prospect. But like, why is mental health such a taboo topic in sales, even though it's clearly such a high stakes environment? Like, and what I mean by high stakes environment is, especially in tech, every tech company, the benefits are usually great health insurance, but yet like we still just don't talk about. We say, hey, here's all these tools that you can have to take care of yourself, but like it's still just not talked about. Why do you think that is?
Well, in sales, typically we're very goal oriented, competitive, driven people, right? We want to crush the targets. We want to meet the quotas. And we have a lot of this fear of missing out, fear of inaction, like stuff that happens. If I don't do this, I'm not going to make it. If I take this day off. And I think that's could be like a cultural thing in the orgs that you're at.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think we're just kind of naturally wired a lot to be worried about we're not going to make it if we take the time off, essentially, right? And so I think that's kind of part of why we don't do anything, like we don't deal with it, so to speak. We don't tend to have a lot of role models in our industry, within our orgs, people taking off time or creating mental health boundaries. I hate using that word, but triggered. Oh, that's another one. Don't like that either. But but like we don't have a lot of the role model for it, and so there's that.
Do you think we're starting to see the transition?
I hope so. I mean, you're very much a product of your environment, right? And so it can be very relative to the roles and the jobs that people have had. That's where when I said earlier about wanting to be more proactively vocal about it, it wasn't just for myself, it was for the org that I had built out. And so one of the things I started doing was these things called me days, where once a month I would take off a day. Everyone knew about it. To go do whatever the heck I wanted. If it's going to be me sitting in this room using my Cricut machine with all those thingies on the back of that door to make stuff, fine. Or whatever. Maybe I go to the spa. Who cares? But it was for me. And it was a day where kids are not here. Husband's not, he's at work, like me, and doing it consistently. And I wanted to set an example that even the one leading the whole sales org in a hyper growth startup will go and take those days off so that I can be a really great version of me. And apparently it spread to someone who was in the CS org asking the CS leader, like, oh, well, like, Lindsay does her me days. Can we do me days too? And he was like, sure. Yeah, totally. But I think she thought for some reason I was like not having to use our PTO to do it. So he asked me in our one-on-one, he was like, by the way, do you use PTO when you do your me days? I was like, well, yeah. He was not just being like, you know what? No problem. I have 12 extra random days. And I was like, yeah, she can go do them all she wants. She just got to use her PTO. And he was like, okay. So, it was kind of fun. But I'm glad that it became something that other people were aware of, at an IC level of like, oh, well, she's doing it. I want to do that.
I love that. So like, I'm curious, outside of me days, what are some other things, examples of like things you put in place to like help create that culture, to help create that environment where people feel comfortable, right? Either talking about it or they have the right resources for it.
So there's a couple things. I mean, literally just telling people to go away is something I'm pretty known for. I'm like, lovingly go away is what I tell people a lot. So if like you're supposed to be off, first of all, I'm going to give you a really hard time if you're trying to work. Get out of here. Or if you're not taking time off, right, I'm going to figure out how we're going to get there. So me being proactive and being very mindful of people that I'm not just managing, like I'll do it to my own CEOs and founders. I'm like, hey, you're not supposed to be working today. What are you doing? I got it. Get out of here. But being proactive about that, being aware, being able to say, you haven't taken any time off in a while. And then being like, oh, I think that's just an easy thing anyone can do, right? I know I'm pretty sure there's like some of the HR software and stuff out there too can even like alert you if someone doesn't have either planned time off or hasn't taken time off in a while. So if not, I'm sure there's tools that can help you. And then if there's a good opportunity in any kind of conversation to describe any personal experiences that you've had, that have to do with mental health. That is one of the biggest things that you can do to now be relatable, build fantastic trust. And that's one thing that I think we don't get probably as very much of. You said I still deal with anxiety. I take medication. Yeah, I've dealt with depression as long as I can remember, knowing if I was feeling depressed, whether I knew it was happening or not. And I take medication because I need it to operate.
Life's a lot better when I take my medication.
Better for everybody.
And
Right?
it's not a silver bullet though, right? Like I
No.
still have to do my things that I know when I have the triggers. I know when I feel that anxiety coming on of like what I need to do. But it definitely does help. It slows down the process of like me just going from here to here.
Yeah. Well, someone had put, I think it was in one of my, I'm only in a few communities because I've only been in ones that I can really be active in. And someone kind of asked something about how do you like deal with life? Basically, something a little more specific than that. And I went, I take depression antidepressants. But I wasn't sure.
They're like, who's your doctor?
I was like, and then there's things like, and there's therapy and there's exercise and it has to be a holistic thing, of course. But I was like, my immediate thought was just like, I take medication.
Yep.
Help.
You know,
I need help.
one thing that has helped, right? Because I think like you had a really good one with, was it Spill?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's a lot of tools out there, but one thing that I've seen that has helped is things that every manager or sales leader can do. And I'm not saying like it's a foolproof, but it's worked for me with my teams. Is just like doing growth development plans.
Yeah.
And why I say that is because most growth development plans are about, hey, how can you perform better, or how can we squeeze more juice out of you?
Right.
And when I do growth development plans, my reps can create 3 goals, right? I encourage them to do no more than 3, right? You want to be intentional
Right.
behind it. And then I ask them is like only one of those goals can be related to your current role. I want one to be personal and I want one to be developmental. It's also been a great way to like connect on a more personal level to where it's like somebody is trying to save money to like put a, down payment on a house, or they're trying to pay college debt. Like it really creates that connection. But I think it's also, and it's something I believe in as a leader, is like my job is to help people become better people, not just better sellers, but help them become better people. And I think when you actually do that and you do that successfully, production is like a byproduct because people actually feel the balance. They feel cared for, they feel heard, and they don't feel as though they're just another cog in the machine.
Yeah. I always like to say that I'm going to be your, how do I put it? I'm saying it well, but basically to the effect of like, I'm going to be your strongest support. I'm going to be stronger support than you are for yourself until you get there. Like, I'm advocating for you. And, that's not something that everyone can talk about if they've been so lucky, the manager that they ever had that changed their life, less. Like, I would be lucky that I get to be that for multiple people. And it's when I think back on, I was actually talking to a founder, about a CEO, about potentially joining his org. And he had asked me like, what's the biggest impact you've made essentially? And I said, do you mean on a business or on the people I work with? And he was like, well, I'll let you decide which one. And I was like, well, I'm going to talk about people because that's the thing is that's me. Like, yeah, I know I'm supposed to be the revenue leader. And, I help the business get to this $1 million, whatever. I'm like, that's great enough. But I'm a people first leader no matter what. So I was like, I thought about like one of the people I managed. And I'm like, it was so cool. I got to see this person get married, have babies, buy a house, like get promoted 3 times, like while I was working with him, managing him, and like life-changing things, that are the more important besides the promotion or whatever, but like, and being a part of getting to decide how parental, like there was no parental leave when I joined early stage startup stuff, right? And like advocating for these things for people that I manage so that they can do these things in life. Amazing. I care about that more than the fact that he would also happen to be like an incredible salesperson. But why do you think he was so motivated, to keep being like that? Because it built this life.
No, I believe is like you work to live, you don't live to work, right? And I agree with you. I think like my proudest moment as a leader, because I'm never going to go to a rep and just be like, hey, have I helped your life? Like,
Yeah.
feed
How
me
has it helped your
something.
life lately?
I'm a words of affirmation person, but like I'm never going to do that to someone. In my
Save it for others.
leadership career, though, I've had sales managers, I've had reps that have actually gone with me or followed me to other organizations. That was the first time where I was like, okay, there's something that I must be doing right, that people are willing to actually like change their livelihood to actually like follow me as a leader. And that's where I started paying more attention. I was like, okay, what am I doing that's working?
So I
And
can do it
whatever
again.
I'm doing that's not working, like
Yeah.
throw that in the trash, get it out of here. I wanna transition a little bit on the sales leader side, right? So like
Yeah.
let's get real. We wear a million hats. So like how can a sales leader carve out time for their own mental health without feeling like they're dropping the ball at work, right? Because I think that's the natural pressure where it's like, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I always had the I'll get to it later mentality. I can't tell you how many times I probably have told my partner, I'm like, when this is done, I'll do X. When this is done, I'll start working out again. When this is done, I'll start going to therapy again, right? So like
Right.
that's always an excuse back there. So like what are some things that you have like from suggestions or things that have worked?
Saying no.
That's a
Like the power of no is huge. And I'm a very, I want to do it all person.
mm-hmm.
I will be baseball team mom. I will be the head of the sales department. I will volunteer in the classroom. I will make pasta from scratch with zero flour. Like, I want to do
Impressive.
all those things.
Yeah.
Can't, you cannot, right? And so when I worked at HubSpot, my only time I wasn't in super early stage, one of the very exciting parts about that was it was fully remote. This was before COVID, and they're very into like remote work-life balance, unlimited PTO, all that stuff. And one of my favorite AEs had gone over there and was like, you'd love it because parents they love it here and they can be awesome at their job. And I'm like, win. And by now I had 3 boys. So I was like, yes, I want to go be more involved. And so since I thought, because I was remote too, that I could start doing a lot more things like be baseball team mom and I signed up to be room parent, I was like, oh my God, I
Oh,
can't
you
do
did it.
I did
My
it.
wife almost did, and I was like,
Can't
let's
do it.
think through that. Can we commit to
Here's
that?
the number 2, say no. And then specifically in point 1A, say no to being room parent. Actually, I think it's great. If you can do it, you should do it one time. And I did one time and never again. But it made me realize like, no, I have to figure out what I'm going to say no to. I can still be involved in my kids' lives, right? And I can still, but like you got to learn to say no. And especially in leadership, especially in executive level leadership, you need to know what you're saying no to so that you know what you're going to say yes to. I'm a firm believer in that. The fantastic strategy building actually has more to do with figuring out what are we not doing than what are we doing. It's just like you tell people you can't have more than 3 goals. You just cannot do that many things. So knowing how to say no is really important, and getting someone to help you say no is another tip where they like, Lindsay, oh, no, remember? And I'm like,
Accountability partners is critical, and you hit a good point, right? I mean, the saying no has probably been my biggest challenge. You could probably ask anybody that's worked with me, like Heath will always get it done. I mean, in college, I was called Heath all day, right? Like that was just like who I was known for. Like it
and
was
it's an
go, go,
identity that
go.
you've
It's an
created for
identity that
yourself.
became part of me. And I learned the hard way that when you say yes to too much, you're making a little impact across a bunch of things. But when you say no, it allows you to actually make more impact on fewer things, but that more impact is actually going to have more results. And it's also going to enable you to actually have more balance, and you actually start to enjoy things a lot more.
Well, there's
I think
that.
it's a
You
powerful
want to
way.
enjoy it.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be that I'm staying up till whatever time, stressed out about making snowmen out of marshmallows, whatever, right? Whatever it might be, because that was supposed to be enjoyable. And like, actually, it's been a big no day for me today, actually, because as you and I were just talking about, I'm like melting over here this week, and I was like doing fine and everything's great. And then yesterday I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm feeling it now, right? everyone kind of was starting to express it like on LinkedIn last week too, like, oh my God, it's the end of the year and it's nuts. And I'm like, I'm great. I'm fine. I'm on top of it. And then yesterday I was like, no, I'm not. And so this morning I'm looking, I still have my Thanksgiving pumpkins and not like real ones. They're fake. They'd be disgusting. And like my doormat outside on the porch. And I keep saying, I'm like, just go take them away and put the Christmas stuff there. But see, here's the thing. I don't just have the same Christmas decorations to use every year. We do different themes every single year.
What's the theme this year?
It's Transformers.
I love it.
Everyone gets to take a turn in the family. So the 6-year-old chose this. And my husband thinks he's just like, why do you do this to yourself? I'm like, it's supposed to be fun, right? I get creative and how do I make this work? And it was fun. Now we're getting to crunch time. There's too many things happening. And I was going to do this thing outside that went with a theme. And I realized this morning, no, I'm not. Christmas is in less than, it's next week and it looks great inside. Very parent theme. I don't care. I'm not doing it. Nope. That's one thing I got to say no to. And then, because I realized is that if I do that, this is no longer fun.
Mm-hmm. It's
this is a chore. This is a job. This is adding to my list of things I have to do. Says no one will know.
Yeah.
No one will know whether I did it or not, and so you just have to start. I think that's a good like filter for you to sometimes abide by too, is like, is this becoming something you just hate? Like it stresses you out to no end. Probably a thing that you should say no to. Can't say that in everything in your job. Not everything you can't just be like, nope, I'm not going to do that. But
I do like the work related. I try to put myself in a position to where I can say, if I say yes to this, then what am I saying no to?
Yeah.
If you're telling me this is a priority, what are we aligning on that we're deprioritizing? If you're not having those conversations, that should be a clear signal that you're probably saying yes to too much.
Yeah.
And so you hit a good one with the Transformers. It's like, do you have like a go-to mental health check or like a daily ritual or a stress busting like music playlist? Like what keeps you grounded?
Well, many years, about a decade ago, I got into Pure Barre, which a lot of people now know what bar is for exercise or whatever, right? And I was getting really consistent with it. I was a dancer my whole life and I was a competitive ice skater, when I was a kid too. So like what I did for passion happened to be exercise. And then I started going to like the actual gym when I was in college because I was bored out of my mind because I was a nerd and I went to school to be a doctor originally. So I wasn't going there. We had no football team, okay, at UC Irvine. So I did that and I ended up working there at the gym too. So I kind of got into it. But when I graduated and I started like working and stuff, I just didn't enjoy. I mean, a lot of people don't, but like I didn't ever want to go back to the gym. I'm like, this isn't fun exercise for me. I don't want to do it. So when I found Pure Barre, it was the first thing I found that I really loved. And I stuck with it. But when I was pregnant with my youngest, I have like, just wanted to throw up all the time. So I was like, I'm not doing that. It took me years to ever go back. And it took me until the summer of last year to actually ever go back consistently. I'd never been like, when I was consistent, it was 2 to 3 times a week. But since last year, I'm there easily 4 times a week, maybe 5, but usually 4. And I don't go on the weekends. I don't even worry about it. It does not fit into the chaos of whatever's going on, or if I just want to do nothing. And I go in the middle of the day, which it was really hard for me to get in that groove because it felt disruptive at first. Now I crave it. And so I can't say that I'm always like, oh, I feel so good that I go to Pure Barre. But what I do know is that when I don't get to go as often, I get very cranky.
That's how the gym was my go-to. I used to go to the gym like 5-6 times a week. And that was before kids.
Yeah.
I am definitely in the new parent shuffle, even though we have a 3-year-old, but we also have a 16-month-old.
Yeah, you guys are in.
So it's like,
yeah,
we're trying to figure out what does that new routine look like. And we've gone through we get the mornings from this hour, you get the afternoons. I think we're starting to figure out that new rhythm. But the joy of having young kids is once our 16-month-old turns 2, everything's going to change again. We have to figure it out. And so I'm curious for people out there that are listening, especially leaders, right? Like actions always speak louder than words. And so you use some examples of like what you did to be able to create that culture and create that environment for your reps. And so like, what are some small impactful things that leaders can actually do to show their teams like it's okay to prioritize mental health? Like
Yeah.
you actually should make it a priority.
I think you just have to be very vocal about it. You ask people their plan. You know, when you're doing one-on-ones, especially ones that are at like a start of a year, start of a quarter, I think that's a really good place to ask, what are you doing to, you know, make sure you have your balance? And also showing them like a plan of how things are going to keep going really well when you're not here is, I think, really important, because it goes back to that when we're in sales, we're worried that if we take time off, we're not going to do as well. So one thing that I started doing at an org was having whether it was one of my managers or an actual rep, we made a Notion page of the things that, like, kind of like where they were leaving off, the kind of stories, you know. This is not an episode about pipeline hygiene, but first and foremost, it was not a list of their pipeline, because I don't have poopy pipelines. So I knew that that would be easy for me to jump in and help out with that. But it was more like the stories of like kind of where they're leaving off. And then while they're out, I would go and add to that Notion about where things had been at, so that when they came back, they were able to jump right back in, as if they hadn't been out. Things had progressed the way they should. Like, I had their back, you know, they did not lose out, and they can continue on, you know, being completely unplugged during that time off. And when they know there was like a plan for it to be taken care of, they were more likely to actually do it, you know. But I think that that's kind of an easy tactical thing that you can do as a leader, to say, here's what's our plan, and then let me help you proactively make sure you're doing it. Otherwise, things turn into, you know, go into reactive land, and it's very hard to get out of that.
Yep. So one other thing, I'm curious if you've ever done it, and this is my suggestion for the audience: comp plans. Right? If your comp plan does not even say anything about, hey, we respect you taking time off, so we will actually adjust your quota if you take more than X number of days in a consistent time frame, I think that's an easy one right there.
Yeah, you're so
That
right.
tells your reps like, hey, you can take time off, and we'll make sure that like you're taken care of, right? I think
Yeah,
that's
I build
one
quota
easy.
relief in every single
Yep.
one of my comp plans.
Yep.
Depending on the sales motion, but I've been living in enterprise for a while. Usually get to take quota relief twice in the year. And, you know, the only rule is you got to call it before the quarter starts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I stole that from HubSpot. They do that. And they're,
We did that at Uber as well.
And not only quota relief, but even the way that you build ramp and build your comp plan in general, I think speaks volumes about what you care about most from the reps. You know, when you have horrific ramp, like if you have lack of or unrealistic ramp built into your comp plans, what you're telling them is, I just care about you putting up numbers, not I want you to properly onboard and learn the product, the service, your role. Because that's one of the stressors whenever you start a new role, and as a salesperson, is you have to build your pipeline, you have to learn, and you're not going to make money right away. You make bad decisions when you're worried about that. And so you're not going to focus on the right things. If you build a proper ramp, I'm telling you, I trust you, because I trusted that I made the right hire, that you're going to be fantastic. And we're smart enough sales leaders to build this into our financial models, that we know how long it takes to ramp, so that you're focused on this. So you are going to get paid your full amount, right? Your full OTE for this amount, you know, for this long, so that by the time you're off ramp, you're good
producing.
to go. Yeah. And the people who are really good, they tend to make some big money in the early days, because I don't just do here's your normal ramp. You can get this and anything else you get while you're going. And it's very motivating, right? So I think, to your point, that's a great call out. Even the way you structure your compensation plans really speaks to how you feel and trust the people that you're hiring, you know, that you're not just the number, and take your time properly in everything that you're doing.
So we got to feed one for the skeptics, and I know we're over time, so we'll wrap it up in a second. How does focusing on mental health actually boost performance and revenue in the long run, from your experience?
I feel like if they don't get this, just move along. We're not, listen to us, you ain't gonna like it. I mean, of course we could go and find data galore that supports that when you are a happy and healthy human, that you do better in your jobs. You're more productive and you do better. And then everyone makes more money and we're all happier. All I can do is encourage someone who maybe hasn't been as done the things that you and I have done before, or felt as passionately about it as we do. Try it with someone and see how it goes. That's all you can do. I dare you to try it out, then there's no other way you'll really know. So like I said, we could shove all the data to you all you want, and you may or may not believe it, but maybe you should just try it out. And if turnover is an issue in your teams or your orgs, then you might want to consider the
It might be the clear sign.
Yeah.
So it leads to a good one, right? Is like talking about, and this will be the last one we'll cover, is like the burnout piece, right?
Yeah.
So let's assume that you've created an org or you're thinking about changes that you can make to prioritize that mental health. I think the one thing that can help any revenue leader is like, we hear the word burnout. We hear the term, it's thrown around like ice cream, I feel like. But like, what are the red flags that leaders or teams should actually watch for before it's too late?
I think one of them is when you have these great like one-on-ones or conversations with someone, and then none of those things end up happening right after that you talked about. That's and a lot of us are quick to be like, what is wrong with them? We made a plan, and they're not doing it. Just do the thing. If they're not doing the thing, that's probably a red flag. I think I realized at some point that one of my superpowers is empathy. Like I'm really empathetic. I never thought that it was considered really, I thought it was just normal. But a lot of times if someone's not doing well in their job, my first thought isn't they're not very good, right? Or guess I made a mishire or something like that. My first thought's always what's going on in their life. And so if someone's not able to, if you have these like amazing conversations and you feel like, okay, we fixed it, we're going to be fine. And then you don't get the action still, red flag, there's something going on there deeper, and it almost never has to do with the actual job. I've seen incredible salespeople just plummet because of mental health things that aren't getting addressed.
I love that because I've actually used, there's the REX framework, right, of coaching, which is winning by design, which is the REKS, right? Results, effort, knowledge, and skills. And what I've evolved mine is the REX, but like a rec, WRECKS.
The other kind of rec.
Yeah. But here's how I look at it. What's the win is the W. Did you win or did you not? Right? Let's just look at that. Then what were the results that led to that outcome? Because closed ones, pipeline created, those are all results, right? That's not an effort metric. Then I look at the effort metric, but then the C in the REX is like, what challenges that person face, right? Were there internal challenges? Were there market challenges? Is something going on with that individual? Because I think that's also very important to look at, because there could have been a major catastrophe in that person's life that impacted, their actual mental capacity to perform. And we need to take that into consideration, because we could be making long-term assumptions on a person, not actually understanding or addressing the short-term circumstances that they might have been going through. Right.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I think that's critical. So I want you to like take your time on this one and be like as concise as possible. Right. If you were to give a leader playing the long game a blueprint today for keeping mental health a priority throughout their career, what would that blueprint kind of look like?
So it's going to circle back to kind of the start of our conversation. Choose the org, or if you're like me, the orgs, that meet your non-negotiables. It's going to start with you. I liken this to just the general, like, you can't take care of other people if you're not taking care of yourself. So if you don't start with joining places where you can be great, period, and happy, and an example, it's going to be very difficult for you to do it for anyone else and then build and or instill that culture. So you got to start there. And when you do find that place, then figure out what it looks like for yourself to have your checks and balances, to have your mental health things, et cetera. So it might be me days and certain lengths of vacations and or whatever that looks like for you, making sure you work out in your schedule, start your day off with a yoga session, whatever. I don't know what it is. And then from there, the rest is going to follow of some of the things we've talked about in here. But I think the most important thing will be proactivity about it, period. Because we always talk about it's too late. Once you already burn out, it's too late. And, now you got to crawl yourself out. But just get to know the people that you're going to work with. That's really all you have to do. Like, genuinely get to know them. And to your point, like when you make goals, because most of the thing is there's actually a small percentage of sales performers that are motivated by money.
That's
They're
true.
the easiest ones. If I throw a $200 Amazon card out, they'll do anything to get it. It's great. I don't care about it. So it's like, what do they care about? What motivates them? What is important? And if you can't figure that out, you don't know how to help advocate for them, protect them, and get them to those goals. You certainly aren't going to know how to get them to have any mental health balance if you don't really know them.
That is spot on. I'm a big believer motivation is intrinsic. You can't create motivation. That's intrinsic of the person. But what I do believe your job is as a revenue leader is to create the right environment for those who are motivated to be successful. And the only way you can create that environment is by actually understanding what motivates them and then building a process around that person, right? That's why I don't believe there is no one-way framework of treating every single person the exact same. It's not a machine line. Everybody's different, right? It's when people ask me, they're like, what's the hardest thing about being a leader or managing people? I'm like, it's people. Every single person is different, right?
Just like parenting,
there
all
isn't
three of my
this
kids are
one book that
completely
could go
different.
wrong. Exactly. Well, Lindsay, this has been awesome. I've absolutely really enjoyed the time with you today. I really appreciate it. For the audience, if this hit home for you, share it with your team, share it with someone in your network. Let's keep this conversation going because sales is tough, right? But it doesn't have to be at the expense of well-being. So Lindsay, I'm going to let you close it out. For every aspiring rep, every go-to-market leader, every go-to-market pro out there, what is that one thing you want them to hear loud and clear about when it comes to mental health?
We all struggle with it. You don't have to, be diagnosed with anxiety or depression or any of that to still have mental health struggles. So it's an equalizer for us. So don't be alone. Hit me up on LinkedIn anytime you want. I have plenty of mom chats with people all the time. People I've managed in 10 years. I need a mom talk. Let's do it.
Love that. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time today, and I know we'll be chatting soon. So thank you so much for joining the show. All right, we'll chat soon, okay?
Okay.
Have a good one.